The first thing Ethan noticed about Horizon Crown Station was that it never truly slept. Artificial dawns rolled across the transparent ceiling every 40 minutes, painting millions of travelers beneath shifting shades of gold, violet, and sapphire. Cargo drones drifted through the air like silent metallic birds. Magnetic trains crossed overhead without tracks, and holographic signs continuously translated themselves into hundreds of alien languages before changing again a heartbeat later. For most visitors, the station was a miracle of engineering. For Ethan, it was just another place with broken machines. He stepped over a repair drone that had somehow welded itself to the floor and sighed. "I leave Earth for 6 months," he muttered, "and somehow the robots are still trying to destroy themselves." The drone cheerfully replied, "Thank you for your emotional support. I wasn't supporting you." Support acknowledged. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Fantastic. He collected his toolbox and continued through the endless commercial district, where creatures from every corner of the galaxy hurried past without looking at one another. Towering insect merchants bargained with floating jellyfish scholars. Crystal-bodied travelers glimmered beneath the station lights, while tiny furry engineers argued with vending machines that insisted soup counted as legal currency. Everyone seemed busy. Everyone seemed important. No one seemed to notice anyone else. That was why the small figure sitting beside a decorative gravity fountain caught Ethan's attention. She couldn't have been older than 8 by human standards. Her silver skin reflected the pale blue light surrounding the fountain, while long, elegant ears peeked through soft white hair that rested on her shoulders. Her violet eyes followed every family walking by. Children laughed together. Parents carried gifts and supplies. No one stopped near her. Some people even changed direction, avoiding her without a second glance. She simply hugged her knees tighter and watched the crowd. Ethan slowed. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe they were late. 5 minutes passed. She never moved. A hovering security drone drifted nearby. Ethan pointed toward the little girl. "Is she lost?" The drone scanned her. "Negative." "Is someone watching her?" "Unknown." "You don't know?" "We know that we do not know." That's surprisingly honest. "We recently updated our honesty protocol. I can tell." The drone floated away as proudly as if it had solved a major crime. Ethan looked back toward the girl. She wasn't crying. Somehow that made it worse. She had the quiet expression of someone who had grown used to being invisible. A candy kiosk stood across the walkway. The robotic vendor wore an oversized chef's hat and greeted him enthusiastically. "Welcome, customer. Today's Terran Caramel has only a 3% chance of causing interspecies addiction." "Only 3? Our lawyers call that excellent." "I'll take one." The robot carefully wrapped a single piece of caramel. "Would you like insurance?" "For candy?" "You never know." Ethan laughed, paid the vendor, and walked back toward the fountain. The little girl looked up cautiously as his shadow crossed the glowing floor. He crouched so they were at eye level and held out the wrapped candy. "I don't know if your species likes caramel," he said with an easy smile. "But humans have survived centuries by believing sugar can solve almost anything." She stared at the tiny package without speaking. Then she looked at him, then back at the candy. Slowly, almost as if she expected the offer to disappear, she reached out with both hands. The little girl's fingers carefully peeled away the bright wrapper, as though she had been handed a priceless crystal instead of an ordinary piece of Terran caramel. She lifted it to her nose first, sniffing it with exaggerated seriousness before cautiously placing it into her mouth. For 3 silent seconds, Ethan couldn't read her expression. Then her violet eyes became impossibly wide. She looked at him as if he had just revealed the greatest secret in the galaxy. "Good?" Ethan asked. She nodded so enthusiastically that several strands of her white hair bounced against her long, elegant ears. "Very good!" Her voice was soft, almost musical, carrying an accent unlike anything Ethan had ever heard. "I'll take that as a positive review." She smiled. It wasn't a large smile. It was the uncertain smile of someone who had forgotten how smiling felt. A tiny floating cleaning robot drifted between them, scanning the candy wrapper. "Congratulations," it announced. "A successful nutritional exchange has been recorded." Ethan blinked. "Why?" "The Station Happiness Initiative appreciates positive social interactions. You people measure happiness? We also measure awkward silences." The robot hovered for 2 seconds. "This one was acceptable." It floated away. Ethan laughed under his breath. "This station gets stranger every minute." The little girl giggled. The sound surprised even her. She covered her mouth, then laughed again, louder this time. People walking nearby glanced over for only a moment before continuing toward shops, transports, and business meetings. No one stopped. No one asked why such a young child was sitting alone. Ethan leaned against the glowing fountain. "So, what's your name?" She hesitated. "Eli." "Nice to meet you, Eli. I'm Ethan." She repeated it carefully. "E-than." Close enough. She seemed fascinated by the pronunciation, repeating it several more times until she finally smiled with satisfaction. "Ethan, there you go." For several minutes, they simply watched the endless crowds. A massive reptilian merchant argued with a six-legged banker about import taxes. Two floating spheres raced through the air before colliding with an advertisement hologram that immediately tried to sell them insurance. Somewhere nearby, an announcement echoed through the station. "Attention passengers, please stop feeding the quantum pigeons. They now exist in 17 timelines simultaneously." Ethan looked upward. "I'm not even going to ask." "You should not," replied a passing maintenance drone. "They bite." Eli laughed again. Her laughter was becoming easier. That alone felt worth the price of the candy. Ethan noticed she was still wearing the same simple, gray clothing as before. It was clean but plain, with no family insignia, school emblem, or travel identification. "Are you waiting for someone?" She nodded. "My mama." "She's working?" Another nod. "Long work." "How long?" Eli lifted both shoulders. "I don't know." There was no complaint in her voice, only patience. That somehow made Ethan's chest feel heavier. Before he could ask another question, Eli suddenly stood. She slipped her tiny hand into his without warning. Her hand was surprisingly warm. She looked up at him with complete certainty. "Come." Ethan smiled. "Where?" "Mama." "I thought she was working." "Yes. So, we're going to interrupt her?" Eli nodded as though interrupting mothers was perfectly reasonable. "She must meet Candy Human." Ethan laughed. "I already have a title." She looked completely serious. "Yes." "Candy Human?" Another firm nod. "I've had worse nicknames." Without another word, she began pulling him through the crowded marketplace. They weaved between merchants, transport platforms, shimmering energy sculptures, and towering holographic trees that changed color with every passing minute. After several turns, Ethan noticed something strange. The crowd was thinning. The bright shopping district gave way to quieter corridors, used mostly by station personnel. Doors no longer displayed advertisements. Instead, they bore encrypted security symbols and maintenance markings. "Eli," she kept walking. "Does your mother work back here?" A cheerful wall terminal suddenly activated. "Warning," it announced. "Authorized personnel only." Ethan stopped. "I don't think I'm authorized." Eli tugged his hand again. "It's okay. That's usually what people say right before something becomes very much not okay." She only smiled. Then the sealed security door recognized her face. Without a single alarm, it quietly slid open. The heavy security door closed behind them without making the slightest sound. Ethan instinctively looked back. "That's comforting," he muttered. "Nothing says perfectly normal afternoon, like a door that quietly removes your escape route." Eli simply continued forward, still holding his hand. Beyond the entrance stretched a corridor unlike anything in the commercial district. The polished walls shimmered with liquid metal patterns that constantly rearranged themselves into flowing constellations. Tiny maintenance drones, no larger than insects, flew through invisible openings, repairing microscopic imperfections before they could even become scratches. Everything felt impossibly expensive. "So," Ethan whispered, "your mother works in maintenance?" Eli tilted her head. "No." "Security?" She smiled. "No." "Well, that narrows it down to approximately 4 million professions." She giggled again. The corridor opened into a circular chamber surrounded by enormous holographic windows. They displayed every sector of Horizon Crown Station simultaneously, each image updating in real time. Cargo bays, marketplaces, docking rings, residential districts, engineering tunnels, even places Ethan had not known existed, floated like living maps around the room. At the center stood a single woman. She appeared almost human. Her graceful figure was wrapped in a simple dark traveling coat, but nothing about her posture was ordinary. Long silver hair rested over her shoulders, framing elegant features and striking sapphire blue eyes. Like Eli, she possessed long, beautifully shaped ears that extended gracefully through her hair, giving her an otherworldly appearance without diminishing her humanity. She looked no older than 30, yet there was something ancient in the calm confidence of her gaze. When Eli released Ethan's hand and ran toward her, the woman's composed expression softened instantly. "Mama," she knelt and embraced the little girl. "You wandered farther than we agreed. I found Candy human." The woman blinked once before looking toward Ethan. "Candy human?" Ethan raised one hand awkwardly. "I was hoping that nickname wouldn't become official." A faint smile crossed her lips. "I'm afraid it already has." Her voice carried quiet elegance, every word measured but warm. Eli proudly held up the empty candy wrapper like a priceless treasure. "He gave me this. I can see that. He was nice. I can also see that." Ethan scratched the back of his neck. "It was only candy." The woman slowly stood. "Sometimes the smallest gifts reveal the largest hearts." Before Ethan could answer, one of the floating holograms flashed crimson for half a second. The woman glanced toward it. The warning disappeared instantly, almost too quickly. She had definitely seen it. She simply chose not to react. "Interesting." "So," Ethan said, trying to lighten the atmosphere, "this is quite the office. It serves its purpose. I've worked in supply closets larger than my apartment, but somehow less impressive than this room." That earned another small smile. "I am Lyra." "Ethan, I know." He paused. "You know? Eli has repeated your name 23 times during the last 4 minutes." Eli nodded proudly. "I practiced. I noticed." One of the hovering service drones floated toward Ethan carrying a silver tray. "Guest protocol initiated," it announced. A steaming cup appeared before him. He looked inside. The liquid glowed bright green. "Should it be doing that?" The drone answered immediately. "Statistically speaking, yes." Statistically? 99.6% of visitors survive their first cup. Ethan slowly looked at Lyra. "Is your coffee always this encouraging?" "It isn't coffee." "Oh." "It is considerably stronger." He carefully placed the cup back onto the tray. "I suddenly miss Earth." Eli burst into laughter. Even Lyra covered a brief smile behind her hand. The atmosphere relaxed, yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something invisible surrounded this place. The holographic display days, the impossible technology, the disciplined silence. None of it belonged to an ordinary government office. His eyes wandered across the chamber until they settled on a polished metallic door near the far wall. 2 towering armored figures stood beside it without moving. Not guards, something more. Their armor shimmered with adaptive camouflage fields, and each carried weapons unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. He quietly leaned toward Lyra. "Those 2 look like they could invade a planet before lunch. They're off duty." That somehow makes it worse. For the first time, Lyra laughed openly. It wasn't loud, but it was genuine. Behind the mirrored walls surrounding the chamber, hidden observation rooms remained perfectly concealed. Several silent figures watched every second of the conversation. None of them cared about the candy. All of them cared about the human who had made their queen laugh. Ethan accepted a glass of ordinary water instead of the glowing drink, earning an exaggerated sigh from the service drone. "Guest has declined the premium beverage. I prefer beverages that don't come with survival statistics." An understandable biological limitation. The drone floated away, sounding genuinely disappointed. Eli climbed into a chair beside her mother, swinging her legs while happily folding the empty candy wrapper into strange little shapes. Lyra watched her daughter with quiet affection before returning her attention to Ethan. "You work on the station?" she asked. "I'm one of the maintenance contractors. Mostly engines, life support systems, transport rails. If something expensive starts making alarming noises, someone eventually calls me." "And are you usually successful?" "I'd like to think so." He smiled. "If not, people tend to explode, which usually generates paperwork." Eli laughed so hard, she nearly dropped her folded wrapper. Lyra shook her head with an amused smile. "You have an unusual sense of humor. My profession requires it." Before she could answer, one section of the holographic wall flickered. For less than a second, Ethan caught sight of dozens of data streams flowing beneath the public display. Fleet positions, energy signatures, security reports. Then the image returned to an ordinary station map. Interesting, that wasn't civilian software. His curiosity was interrupted by a soft chime. One of the armored figures near the distant metallic door suddenly turned toward Lyra and placed a fist against its chest. Neither guard spoke. Lyra responded with the smallest nod. The gesture lasted barely 2 seconds, yet it carried the weight of military discipline. Ethan pretended not to notice. Instead, he examined the room more carefully. The furniture looked simple at first glance, but every surface was constructed from adaptive crystal capable of changing shape. Invisible shield emitters were hidden in the ceiling. Tiny aerial drones drifted silently behind decorative light fixtures, scanning everything without appearing threatening. "This office has enough security to protect the moon," he said casually. Lyra answered just as casually. "It attracts complicated visitors. I usually attract broken vending machines. There is value in both skills." Eli suddenly hopped off her chair. "Mama, yes? He fixed robot." "I did not," Ethan protested. "The robot fixed itself." Eli crossed her arms. "You talked. I complained. You helped." Lyra looked thoughtfully at him. "Many people underestimate the value of simple kindness." Ethan shrugged. "I've never understood ignoring someone who obviously needs company." A brief silence followed. It wasn't uncomfortable. It simply lingered. Finally, Lyra asked, "When you found Eli sitting alone, why did you stop?" Ethan blinked. "Because everyone else didn't." "No other reason?" "I suppose not." He leaned back in his chair. "When I was little, my mother used to tell me something." "What was that?" "If you see someone eating alone, invite them. If you see someone crying alone, sit beside them. And if you see a child alone," he smiled toward Eli, "at least ask whether they'd like some candy." Eli beamed. Lyra lowered her eyes for a moment. Something in his answer had clearly reached her. Before anyone spoke again, the metallic door at the far end of the chamber slid open. 4 individuals entered in perfectly synchronized formation. Unlike the silent guards outside, these newcomers wore elegant white uniforms trimmed with silver circuitry. Each carried a transparent data tablet, glowing with countless symbols. The instant they saw Lyra, they stopped. Without hesitation, all 4 knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty," they said together. The words echoed through the chamber. Ethan stared. His eyes slowly moved from the kneeling officials to Lyra, then to Eli, who looked completely unsurprised. He pointed awkwardly toward Lyra. "Your Majesty?" Eli nodded happily. "I forgot." "You forgot? You didn't ask." Ethan let out a slow breath. "I gave candy to the daughter of a queen." He looked at the ceiling. "I really need to start asking more follow-up questions." The 4 officials remained kneeling until Lyra gave a small gesture with her hand. "You may rise." They obeyed immediately. Not one of them looked directly at Ethan. Their attention stayed fixed on their queen with the unwavering discipline of people who had trained for decades. The chamber fell into a respectful silence that made Ethan suddenly feel very aware of the grease stain on one sleeve of his maintenance jacket. He looked down. "Well, I definitely wasn't dressed for meeting royalty." Eli tilted her head. "I like your jacket. Thank you. It has interesting stains." "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "It is," Lyra smiled. "I believe it is." One of the officials stepped forward, holding a transparent data crystal. "Your Majesty." "The inspection reports are ready. They can wait." The official hesitated. "They concern today's civilian observations." "I said they can wait." "Yes, Your Majesty." The official immediately stepped back. Ethan noticed something unusual. Nobody questioned her. Nobody even looked surprised that she had delayed official business to continue talking with an ordinary maintenance worker. That alone told him how absolute her authority really was. Lyra turned toward him. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "My daughter should never have been left alone for so long." Eli quickly interrupted. "I wanted to watch people." Lyra gently brushed a strand of white hair away from the girl's long ear. "I know. You said we learn by watching." "We do." "I learned." Lyra looked at her curiously. "What did you learn?" Eli answered without hesitation. "Most people don't see." The simple sentence seemed to weigh heavily inside the room. Even the officials lowered their eyes. Ethan quietly understood what she meant. Thousands of people had walked past her. Thousands had looked in her direction. Almost none had actually seen her. He cleared his throat. I suppose busy people become experts at looking through each other. Lyra nodded slowly. That was one purpose of today's journey. You were studying the station, my people. She walked toward one of the holographic windows overlooking the immense commercial district below. Reports can be manipulated. Statistics can be selective. Advisors often tell rulers what they believe rulers wish to hear. Her reflection shimmered against the stars beyond the transparent wall. But ordinary citizens rarely hide the truth. Ethan folded his arms. So you disguised yourself? Yes. And the princess? Eli proudly raised her hand. I wanted adventure. You certainly found it. She grinned. I found Candy Human. One of the officials quietly whispered something to another. Ethan caught only the final words. Official designation. He blinked. Wait. The two officials immediately became silent. Are you actually writing that down? Neither answered. Ethan looked at Lyra. They're writing that down. Lyra unsuccessfully tried to hide another smile. I cannot control every administrative decision. Oh no, he pointed toward the data crystal. Somewhere there's going to be a classified government document that says Candy Human. One of the officials politely cleared his throat. It has already been archived. Ethan stared. You're joking. No. Can I appeal? The filing has been completed. Eli burst into uncontrollable laughter. Even two of the armored guards near the entrance exchanged the smallest glance before quickly returning to perfect discipline. A pleasant chime echoed through the chamber. A different holographic display activated. Instead of surveillance images, it revealed a magnificent starship hidden within one of the station's concealed docking bays. Its silver hull reflected the surrounding stars like flowing water, while elegant blue energy rings slowly rotated around its enormous engines. Ethan instinctively stepped closer. I've never seen that design before. You wouldn't have, Lyra replied. It isn't listed in any civilian registry. It's beautiful. It is home. Eli took his hand again. You come? He looked between the child and the queen. Come. Where? My ship. Before Lyra could answer, one of the displays abruptly flashed crimson. This time the warning remained. Several red markers appeared across the station map. The relaxed atmosphere vanished. The officials immediately became serious. One of them spoke in a controlled voice. Your Majesty, we've detected multiple unauthorized power signatures moving toward the restricted sectors. The smile disappeared from Lyra's face. So soon? Ethan looked at the glowing map. Without realizing it, his years as an engineer noticed something everyone else seemed to be overlooking. He narrowed his eyes. Those aren't moving toward you. Everyone turned toward him. They're moving toward the station's primary reactor. The room became completely silent. Every eye in the command chamber turned toward Ethan. One of the royal officers frowned. The reactor is nearly 3 kilometers from the restricted sectors. Exactly, Ethan replied, which is why nobody expects anyone to go there. He stepped closer to the holographic map. Years spent repairing gigantic fusion engines had trained his eyes to notice patterns hidden beneath layers of technical information. May I? Lyra nodded once. The display immediately shifted, allowing him access. He enlarged the station's energy grid. There. He pointed toward several tiny blinking markers. They're not traveling in a straight line. They're following the maintenance conduits. Another officer crossed his arms. So maintenance conduits contain power regulators. Ethan tapped several glowing junctions. If you overload these in the correct sequence, the holographic computer instantly completed his calculations. A crimson warning spread across the map. Primary reactor, shield failure, 94% probability. Silence filled the room. One officer whispered, impossible. It isn't, Ethan answered quietly. It just isn't obvious. Lyra studied the display. They intend to destroy the station. No. Everyone looked back at him. They intend to force an evacuation. Why? Because chaos is easier to exploit than destruction. He zoomed farther out. If millions of civilians panic, no one notices one small ship leaving the docks. The officers exchanged alarmed looks. The realization spread across the room with frightening speed. One of the guards activated his communicator. Seal every docking bay, another officer interrupted. Already done. A third voice echoed from another console. Unauthorized drones detected in Maintenance Ring 7. Ethan nodded. There they are. Lyra looked at him with new curiosity. You understood all of this within seconds. He shrugged. I fix machines. Machines don't usually organize coordinated attacks. They do when their owners are clever. Eli tugged gently on Ethan's sleeve. Bad people? I'm afraid so. She frowned. They don't deserve candy. Ethan smiled despite the tension. I think that's an appropriate punishment. The nearest royal guard looked genuinely confused. There are punishments involving candy. There should be. Even Lyra allowed herself a brief smile before her expression became focused once again. She began issuing calm, precise commands. Deploy interceptor drones. Read civilian traffic away from the engineering districts. Do not announce the threat publicly. An officer hesitated. Your Majesty, should we activate the royal fleet? No. The room fell silent. They would arrive visibly. She looked toward the holographic image of the crowded station. We cannot allow panic. Ethan admired the decision. Many rulers would have chosen overwhelming force. She had chosen to protect ordinary people first. Suddenly, every light in the chamber flickered. For less than half a second, then again, Ethan's smile disappeared. That's not good. What is it? Lyra asked. The attack has already started. The station trembled almost imperceptibly beneath their feet. Several displays briefly filled with static. A maintenance alarm echoed somewhere deep inside the structure. One of the engineers shouted from another console. Power fluctuations confirmed, another voice followed. Internal repair drones are no longer responding. Ethan frowned. They've infected the maintenance network. Can they do that? If they uploaded a quantum virus. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The expression on every technician's face answered the question. A small spherical repair robot suddenly floated into the chamber. Its cheerful digital face appeared completely unconcerned. It a not discerndi. There is absolutely no reason to panic. The room waited. The probability of catastrophic station failure has increased by only 43%. Everyone stared. The robot continued. Have a pleasant day. It floated directly into a wall, bounced off, then quietly corrected its course, as though nothing had happened. Even several officers couldn't suppress short laughs. Ethan pointed after the robot. I appreciate its optimism. It's malfunctioning, one engineer sighed. No, Ethan replied. I think it's doing its best. The brief laughter faded as another violent tremor shook the station. This one was stronger. Far below, somewhere inside Horizon Crown Station, warning sirens finally began to echo through the immense structure. Lyra looked toward Ethan. I need someone who understands those maintenance systems. He already knew what she was about to ask. He glanced at Eli, who still held the empty candy wrapper safely in one small hand. Then he looked back at the Queen. I was only planning to repair a broken transport rail today. He picked up his toolbox. But I suppose saving a space station wasn't on the maintenance schedule, so let's surprise everybody. Escorted by a squad of royal guards, Ethan sprinted through maintenance corridors he knew almost by memory. The station continued to shudder as warning lights painted the walls crimson, while repair drones spun aimlessly after being corrupted by the quantum virus. Instead of drawing a weapon, Ethan opened his battered toolbox. One of the guards frowned. Is that enough? It has duct tape. The guard blinked. What is duct tape? The reason human civilization still exists. Even in the middle of the emergency, a few helmets tilted in confusion. At the primary reactor chamber, Ethan immediately saw the problem. Dozens of maintenance drones had attached themselves to the shield regulators, following malicious code rather than engineering commands. Destroying them would destabilize the reactor, but allowing them to continue would collapse the containment field within minutes. He smiled. Good, a difficult problem. Lyra arrived beside him. You sound pleased. I'm an engineer. You enjoy difficult problems? We complain about them first, then we enjoy them. Instead of shutting the drones down, Ethan disconnected the central synchronization beacon hidden beneath a service platform. The infected machines instantly lost coordination and began following their original repair routines. One started polishing the reactor housing. Another repaired a pipe that hadn't leaked in years. A third politely apologized to a wall. The lead engineer stared in disbelief. You defeated the virus. I confused it. You confused it? I gave it too many maintenance priorities. The engineer slowly nodded. That is disturbingly clever. The reactor's warning lights faded from crimson to blue. Containment stabilized. Across Horizon Crown Station, emergency sirens gradually fell silent. Cheers erupted over the communication network. The crisis had ended before most civilians even understood there had been one. Hours later, the immense central plaza filled with travelers, merchants, diplomats, and station workers. This time, however, everyone had gathered for a very different reason. Queen Lyra stood upon a raised platform, wearing elegant royal attire instead of simple traveler's clothing. Silver robes shimmered beneath the station lights, while her long, graceful ears framed a jeweled crown that reflected the stars beyond the transparent dome. Beside her stood Princess Eli, proudly holding a small paper wrapper she'd refused to throw away. Lyra addressed the crowd. Today, I walked among my people unseen. Her voice carried effortlessly through the plaza. I witnessed generosity, I witnessed indifference, and I learned a lesson from both. She turned toward Ethan. This human expected no reward. He sought no recognition. He offered simple kindness to a child everyone else ignored. The plaza became completely silent. Compassion cannot be commanded by law. It cannot be purchased by wealth. It begins with a choice. She stepped forward. Ethan of Earth. He awkwardly approached the platform. I was just doing what anyone should. Lyra smiled gently. The tragedy is that not everyone did. She presented him with a silver emblem shaped like a constellation surrounding an open hand. From this day forward, you are an honorary civilian ambassador of the Asterian Dominion. The crowd erupted into applause. Ethan looked at the emblem. I've never received a promotion because I bought candy before. Princess Eli tugged on his sleeve. I helped. You absolutely did. She raised both hands triumphantly. Candy diplomacy works. Laughter spread through the enormous plaza. Even the royal guards smiled openly. One of the senior officials quietly approached Ethan carrying a data crystal. Your official designation has been updated, Ethan sighed. Please tell me it isn't. The official nodded with complete seriousness. Ambassador Candy Human. The surrounding guards immediately looked away, pretending not to laugh. Ethan closed his eyes. I lost that battle, didn't I? Princess Eli hugged his arm. You won. He looked at the smiling child, then at the queen, whose disguised journey had reminded an entire ember what kindness looked like. Finally, he looked across the crowded station. This time, people weren't rushing past one another. Many had stopped to greet strangers. Some offered food, others offered help. A single small act had become something larger than he had imagined. Ethan slipped the constellation emblem into one pocket and the little candy wrapper into the other. One represented honor. The other reminded him why he had earned it. As the royal flagship departed Horizon Crown Station beneath an ocean of stars, Ethan smiled to himself. Sometimes the galaxy wasn't changed by grand speeches, legendary battles, or impossible technology. Sometimes it changed because one lonely child was finally seen, and one ordinary human decided that a piece of candy was worth sharing.